Welcome back to Johnny's Scramble Drill. This is the week 7 edition. I'm stuck in joining me, as he does each and every week, none other than Mr. Johnny Manziel. What we'll do today is go through 3 of the biggest games on the college football Saturday slate. Johnny, how's it going, brother?
Doing good, brother. How are you?
Good, good. Last weekend was pretty wild. Not many people expected it to be that crazy of a day. This was the hype day, so hopefully it lives up to expectations. Let's start things off with the Red River rivalry or shootout, whatever they're calling it these days, between Texas and Oklahoma. Feels weird to say this is an SEC game, and it's also weird that this game isn't at noon, as it usually is. Times are changing in college football in many aspects. Texas close to sitting around a 2 touchdown favorite here. Before you share who you like, you you grew up a Texas fan, right?
I did for sure. This was a game you would always see every single year that was just always an unbelievable rivalry.
Now going to Texas A&M, you obviously have changed your allegiance for good reason, and congrats on that call and the win last week. That Texas A&M Texas game late in the season could have some serious college ball playoff SEC implications. And who knows, maybe they play back-to-back weeks and they could also play in the SEC championship. But you obviously changed your allegiance since you went to Texas A&M. Do you actively root against Texas now? If obviously if they're not playing Texas A&M, does part of you still root for them? Where do you stand there?
No, I wouldn't say I root for them. Being an Aggie, I'm definitely going to be rooting against them in that Texas A&M game later in the year. But it's just kind of for me right now, just a team you have to kind of watch in college football with. Quinn Ewers obviously being the quarterback, having Arch Manning there. They're obviously a story that's in the news almost every single week. But kind of indifferent on my feelings. Definitely be tuned in this week for this game though.
All right, who do you like here? Texas laying 2 touchdowns against an Oklahoma team still banged up at wide receiver. Defense has some juice, but can they slow down Quinn Ewers and company?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a Quinn Ewers type of day. I'm like in Texas minus, the points. Oklahoma's just really banged up on their offense. That's the thing that you just mentioned. But, I just haven't seen enough throughout Oklahoma this year to where, anything can happen in this kind of rivalry game. But, I feel like this is a game that Quinn Ewers gets back on the field and makes some things happen on Saturday.
Yeah, Oklahoma can't really run the ball. I think that's maybe how you have to attack this Texas defense. Michigan obviously couldn't because you, they could just load the box and Texas didn't have to worry about anything else. Well, with Oklahoma, you don't really have to worry about their wide receiver room now, and they can't really run the ball. So it's hard for me to imagine if this Oklahoma, I mean, it's hard to slow down this Texas offense. And if that's the case, it's hard to envision Oklahoma being able to keep up. Let's stay in the SEC and head to prime time in Death Valley, where LSU will host Ole Miss. This line's floating around Ole Miss as a field goal favorite or so. LSU in a decent spot situationally, coming off of a bye. Ole Miss, hasn't had a break yet. They've had 2 physical games against Kentucky and South Carolina in the past 2 weeks. Now hitting the road for their second straight game. Can LSU keep up with Ole Miss here? Johnny, who do you like?
I think I'm going to go ahead and take LSU at home and just go ahead and take the points. Death Valley isn't a place that, people usually come in here and get a lot of wins. Jackson Dart and Ole Miss looked a little bit better last week against South Carolina, but I think this is going to be a tough back and forth kind of game, a game that has a lot of lead changes. So I'm going to go ahead and take the points here and, see if LSU can come out with a win.
I actually agree with you. Brian Kelly's been outstanding off of a bye. And I think that this LSU offense is by far the most explosive passing attack that Ole Miss has faced, right? You look at their schedule, Kentucky kind of limited offensively, South Carolina very limited, especially through the air. And I think the strength of that Ole Miss defense is up front and in their run defense. Secondary has some questions yet to be tested. LSU will certainly do that and has the offensive line that can pass protect against that defensive front. All right, let's move on to the big one between Oregon and Ohio State. Ohio State sitting around a field goal favorite. Seen some back and forth movement on this line here. Look, this game, there's a lot of uncertainty because Ohio State has looked great, a great roster, but haven't really played anybody. They did look impressive against Iowa, but Iowa has its limitations. What say you here, Johnny? Oregon, rare home dog.
I like Ohio State here. Obviously, going on the road to go into Oregon to have to play this game, but I think Ohio State's just looked, their receivers are just absolutely top notch. Will Howard's been playing good football. I think this is obviously their first real test of the season, but one I think they're prepared for. I think this is something that they've looked at early in the season and been able to see this game, and one that I think they'll be prepared for and come out and get a win.
Yeah, Chip Kelly goes back to Eugene. I do think that, with these Big Ten teams, more so than the SEC, they're basically like 2 game seasons, right? Like Ohio State, just with talent alone, is going to be able to beat, 9, 10 teams on their schedule just by showing up. Don't have to show much. We saw this with Michigan last year. In the majority of their games, they didn't show much. So you better believe that Ohio State, against their schedule so far, they haven't really showed much. So we'll see what they've been holding back and what Chip Kelly has had up his sleeve that he was probably waiting for this game, and then also their game at Penn State later in the season. But Johnny, off of another 2-1 week last week, is going with Texas, LSU, and Ohio State. Good luck this weekend, Johnny, and I'll see you next week for week 8.
Thanks, buddy. See you next week.